Hello, and welcome to another effective episode here at Code Your English, the channel where we explore real-life topics to help you grow your English and your mindset at the same time. I'm really glad you're here, and today's episode is a powerful one. We're talking about a phrase you've probably heard many times before. Honesty is the best policy. But what does that really mean? Is honesty always the best choice? And if it is, why does it sometimes feel so difficult to be honest, even with ourselves? Let's start with the phrase itself. Honesty is the best policy is an old proverb. It means that being truthful, telling the truth, living honestly and acting with integrity is the smartest and most reliable way to live your life. It doesn't mean honesty is always easy. In fact, sometimes being honest can be uncomfortable. But in the long run, it brings more peace, more trust, and more respect, both from others and from ourselves. Think about it. Have you ever told a small lie just to avoid hurting someone's feelings? Or maybe you hid the truth because you were afraid of getting into trouble. We've all been there. It's part of being human. But the real question is, what happens after that moment? Do we feel better? Or worse? Do we carry guilt? Or maybe even lose trust from someone we care about? Being honest takes courage. It takes self-respect. It means being real, even when it's difficult. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. We're going to explore why honesty matters, how it helps us grow, and why it can be the key to stronger relationships and a more peaceful life. I also want you to think about this. Have you ever been afraid to tell the truth because you didn't want to be judged? Or maybe you weren't sure how someone would react? What about being honest with yourself, about your goals, your mistakes, or your emotions? These are not always easy questions, but they are important, and they help us understand the real meaning of honesty. So in this episode, we're going to talk about honesty not as a perfect rule, but as a powerful practice, something we can build over time through choices, self-awareness, and experience. This isn't about being brutally honest or saying everything on your mind without thinking. It's about finding balance, speaking truth with kindness, and learning how to live with more integrity. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's dive into this topic together. Because at the end of the day, honesty isn't just about right and wrong. It's about connection, character, and creating the kind of life you can feel proud of. What does honesty really mean? So let's take a moment to really think about this question. What does honesty actually mean? Most of us can give a simple answer, maybe something like not lying or telling the truth. And yes, that's a good place to start. But honesty is more than just saying what's true. It's also about being real, being clear, and being yourself, even when that's uncomfortable. You see, honesty isn't just about facts. It's not just about saying, the meeting is at 10 a.m., or I finished the report yesterday. That's factual honesty, and it's important, of course. But there's another kind of honesty that's often harder to practice. That's emotional honesty. Emotional honesty is when you express how you really feel. For example, saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or that comment hurt my feelings, or I'm not okay right now. These aren't facts, they're feelings. And for many people, this kind of honesty is the most difficult of all. Why? Because emotional honesty makes us feel vulnerable. When we admit our fears, our disappointments, or our needs, we risk being judged or misunderstood. But without emotional honesty, it's hard to build real relationships. It's hard to trust others, or to let them trust us. Being emotionally honest means you're not pretending to be okay when you're not. You're not smiling when you feel like crying. You're being real. And in today's world, that takes strength. Now, let's think about honesty in different areas of life. In relationships, honesty is the foundation of trust. Imagine having a friend who always tells you what you want to hear, even when it's not true. At first, it might feel nice, but over time, you begin to wonder, can I really count on this person? A real friend will come clean when something is wrong. They'll speak from the heart and let you know what they really think. With kindness, of course. That's what makes a relationship deep and meaningful. In the workplace, honesty is just as important. Being honest at work doesn't mean saying everything that comes to your mind without thinking. It means being professional, but also clear and reliable. For example, if you made a mistake, it's better to come clean and take responsibility than to cover it up. Mistakes happen, but when you're honest about them, people respect you more. You show that you care about your work and that you're willing to learn and grow. Honesty at work also means giving feedback in a respectful way. Not just saying what your coworker wants to hear, but maybe calling it like it is when needed. And finally, perhaps the hardest type of honesty is being honest with yourself. Self-honesty means facing your reality, your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits, your dreams. It means asking yourself hard questions. Am I doing what I really want? Am I proud of how I act when no one is watching? Am I avoiding something because I'm afraid? These are not easy questions, and answering them requires courage. But this kind of honesty is where personal growth begins. Without it, we stay stuck in patterns that don't serve us. So you can see, honesty is more than just not lying. It's about showing up as your true self, in your words, your actions, and your emotions. It's about saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and having the courage to speak your truth, even when it's difficult. When we're honest in all areas of life, we open the door to deeper connections, clearer communication, and a more peaceful inner world. And yes, it's not always easy. Sometimes honesty feels risky. Sometimes it's messy. But in the end, honesty is the bridge between who we are and who we want to become. It's the tool we use to shape a life that feels real and not just comfortable. So before we move on, I invite you to think about this. Where in your life could you be more honest? Maybe with someone close to you. Maybe in your work. Or maybe just in how you talk to yourself. Remember, honesty is not about being perfect. It's about being real. And that's where true change begins. What does honesty is the best policy really mean? Now, it's time to begin by thinking about the phrase that is the heart of today's episode. Honesty is the best policy. You've probably heard this saying many times before. But what does it really mean, especially in our daily lives? At its simplest, this phrase tells us that being honest, telling the truth, acting with integrity, and being sincere is the smartest and most reliable way to live. The word policy here means a rule or a way of behaving. So, the phrase suggests that honesty should be our guide in how we act. It's a kind of advice passed down through generations, encouraging us to choose truthfulness over lying or hiding. This proverb has a long history. It's believed to have come from Old English and European traditions, and variations of it exist in many cultures around the world. The idea of honesty as a key value is common in stories, religious teachings, and moral lessons. For example, in ancient times, philosophers and religious leaders often spoke about honesty as a foundation for good character. This shows us that honesty is not just a personal choice, but a social and cultural ideal that helps people live together peacefully. When we say honesty is the best policy, we connect honesty to something bigger: trust and character. Trust is like a bridge between people. When someone is honest, they build that bridge strong. Others can rely on them, feel safe sharing their own thoughts, and believe in their words. This trust is essential in all kinds of relationships: family, friends, work, or community. Without honesty, trust breaks down, and relationships become weak or even fall apart. Character is another important idea here. Being honest is part of having good character. It shows that you are someone who respects yourself and others. When you act honestly, you demonstrate that you are responsible and reliable. This is why many people say honesty builds a person's reputation and dignity over time. But here's a question to think about. Is honesty always easy? Sometimes telling the truth can be difficult. It might make us feel vulnerable or scared. Maybe we worry about hurting someone's feelings or causing conflict. And sometimes people wonder if honesty is always the right thing to do. For example, should we always tell the full truth if it might upset someone? Or is it sometimes better to be gentle with our words? These are important questions because honesty is not just about facts. It's about how we express truth in a way that respects others and ourselves. Honesty includes speaking openly, but also kindly, knowing when and how to share. It's a balance between being truthful and being thoughtful. So, as we explore honesty today, keep this question in mind. How can we be honest in a way that builds trust and shows good character, even when it's hard? That is the challenge and the gift of honesty. The benefits of being honest. Now that we've talked about what honesty really means and what does honesty is the best policy really mean, let's go deeper and talk about the benefits of being honest. Why is it such an important quality to have? Not just in language, but in life? Why do people say that honesty makes everything better? One of the biggest reasons is that honesty builds trust, and trust is the foundation of every strong relationship. Whether it's a friendship, a marriage, a business partnership, or even the connection you have with yourself. When someone is honest with you, you feel safe. You know where you stand. You don't have to guess what they're really thinking, or worry that they're hiding something. And when you're honest with others, they're more likely to feel comfortable being honest with you in return. It creates a healthy space where people can speak openly, solve problems faster, and support each other better. Honesty also helps boost confidence. That might sound surprising at first, but think about it. When you're honest, you're being real. You're not trying to pretend or play a role. You're standing in your truth, and that takes courage. Every time you speak your truth, even when it's difficult, you remind yourself that your voice matters. You start to believe in your own values and choices. That self-respect grows, and little by little, your confidence becomes stronger. Even if people don't always agree with you, they often respect your honesty. And most importantly, you respect yourself. Another powerful benefit of honesty is that it can actually reduce stress and anxiety. Have you ever told a lie and then felt nervous about being caught? Maybe you kept thinking about it, replaying the moment in your head, wondering what might happen. That mental stress builds up over time. But when you tell the truth, there's nothing to hide, nothing to remember or cover up. You're free. You can sleep better at night, and you feel more at peace. Even when telling the truth is uncomfortable in the moment, it usually brings a feeling of relief afterward, like a weight being lifted off your shoulders. Let me share a quick story from my own life. Years ago, I had a close friend who invited me to help with a group project. At the time, I said yes because I didn't want to disappoint them. But deep down, I knew I didn't have the time or energy to commit. So I made excuses, delayed the work, and eventually things got messy. Finally, I decided to come clean. I told my friend the truth, that I had overpromised and that I felt bad about it. To my surprise, they weren't angry. They were actually thankful that I finally opened up. That honest conversation helped us rebuild trust, and we're still friends today. If I had been honest from the beginning, we could have avoided a lot of tension. That experience really taught me something. The truth might hurt for a moment, but dishonesty can hurt much longer. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt relief after telling the truth, even if it was hard? Maybe it was something you were holding inside, or something you were afraid to admit. Think about how you felt afterward. That deep breath, that freedom. That's the power of honesty. It clears the air. It lets you move forward. Of course, being honest doesn't mean everything will be easy. People may not always react the way you hope. But in most cases, honesty makes relationships stronger, not weaker. It gives people the chance to understand you, the real you. And that is something worth sharing. So, as we move through this episode, remember that honesty is more than a moral rule. It's a tool, one that helps us connect, grow, and live with more confidence, trust, and peace. The cost of dishonesty. Even small lies. Now let's look at the other side of the story. What happens when we're not honest? What's the real cost of lying, even if the lie seems small? Many people believe that small lies don't matter. We call them white lies, harmless lies we tell to avoid hurting someone's feelings. For example, saying, "I love your cooking," even when the food wasn't very good. Or saying, "I'm fine," when we're clearly not. These lies might seem polite, or even kind. But if we're not careful, even white lies can lead to bigger problems, especially when they become a habit. Then there are half-truths. These are statements that include some truth, but leave out important parts. Maybe you tell your boss, "I've started the project," but you don't mention that you've only written the title. Technically, it's true, but is it honest? Half-truths can be just as damaging as lies, because they create confusion. People trust your words, but they don't get the full picture. Another type of dishonesty is a lie of omission, when you stay silent instead of saying something important. For example, if your friend is making a big decision, and you know something that could change their mind, but you choose not to say it. You didn't lie with words, but you didn't tell the truth either. And sometimes, silence can speak louder than words. All of these types of dishonesty, white lies, half-truths, lies of omission, can hurt people. They create distance, they damage trust, and maybe most importantly, they can leave you feeling anxious, guilty, or uncomfortable inside. Let me share a short story that really taught me this lesson. A few years ago, I agreed to go to a co-worker's birthday dinner. But on the day of the event, I was tired and just didn't feel like going. Instead of telling the truth, I made up a small excuse. I said I had a family emergency. At first, it felt easy. No conflict, no questions. But a few days later, that same co-worker asked how everything went with my family, and I had to keep lying to keep the story going. One small lie led to more lies. Eventually, I felt embarrassed and distant. The trust between us changed, not because they knew I lied, but because I knew. I started avoiding conversations. The friendship never felt the same after that. That's the thing about dishonesty. Even when no one catches you, you know the truth. And carrying that secret can feel heavy. It takes mental energy to keep up a lie. You have to remember what you said, who you said it to, and how to act around them. That pressure builds up, and over time, it can cause anxiety, stress, and even guilt. Socially, dishonesty breaks connections. When people find out you lied, even once, they begin to question everything you say. They might wonder, what else aren't they telling me? And rebuilding that trust can be very difficult. It's like breaking a mirror. You can fix it, but the cracks are still there. Emotionally, lying can damage your own self-respect. You may start to see yourself as someone who avoids the truth or hides behind stories. And when that becomes your pattern, it's hard to feel truly confident or proud of who you are. Of course, nobody is perfect. We've all told a lie at some point, to protect ourselves, to avoid trouble, or to make someone feel better. But the key is to ask yourself, is this lie really helping? Or is it just making things easier for now? Often we lie because we want to avoid discomfort, but that comfort usually doesn't last long. So next time you feel the urge to hide the truth, even just a little, pause and think, what's the cost of this lie? What would it feel like to be honest instead? Because in the end, even small lies can lead to big problems. And telling the truth, though hard, often leads to freedom. Why it's so hard to be honest sometimes? So, if honesty brings us trust, confidence, and peace of mind, then why do so many of us struggle with it? Why is it so hard at times to simply tell the truth, to be honest with others, and sometimes even with ourselves? One big reason is fear of judgment. We're afraid that if people know how we really feel or what we've really done, they might see us differently. They might criticize us, laugh at us, or think we're weak. So instead of speaking openly, we stay quiet or say what we think others want to hear. We hide parts of ourselves because we're scared of not being accepted. That fear can be very strong, especially in our families, at work, or in cultures where appearances matter a lot. Another reason is fear of conflict. Being honest sometimes means saying something uncomfortable. Maybe you need to give feedback to a colleague, or tell a friend that their behavior hurt you. That kind of honesty can create tension. It can lead to disagreement, and many people try to avoid that at all costs. But in trying to keep the peace, we often carry frustration inside. We smile on the outside, but feel tired, sad, or even angry on the inside. Over time, avoiding conflict through silence can damage relationships more than facing it with honest communication. Then there's perfectionism, the idea that we have to be perfect all the time, or at least look perfect. When we hold ourselves to impossible standards, it becomes harder to admit mistakes, doubts, or weaknesses. We don't want to say, "I don't know," or "I need help," because that feels like failure. But the truth is, being human means being imperfect, and being honest about that is what makes us real and relatable. Some people also struggle with people-pleasing. That means you put others' feelings or opinions above your own, often just to keep everyone happy. People-pleasers often say yes when they mean no, or stay silent when something doesn't feel right. This behavior might come from childhood, culture, or personal experiences. While kindness is a strength, constantly hiding your true feelings to avoid upsetting others can leave you feeling invisible, stressed, and unfulfilled. Another internal barrier to honesty is something called imposter syndrome. That's when you feel like a fraud, like you don't deserve your success, or that people will discover you're not as capable as they think. When you feel like an imposter, it's hard to be honest about your struggles because you're afraid of being found out. So, instead, you try to hide your challenges and pretend everything is under control. But this only increases pressure and keeps you stuck in a cycle of fear and self-doubt. All of these challenges, fear of judgment, fear of conflict, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and imposter syndrome, are very real. They can make honesty feel risky or even dangerous. But here's something to remember. Being honest doesn't mean being unkind. You can speak your truth with care. You can admit your flaws and still be strong. And the more you practice honesty, the less scary it becomes. So let me ask you something. What stops you from being real with others or with yourself? Is it fear, pressure, guilt, or maybe the habit of always saying yes even when your heart says no? Whatever the reason is, you're not alone. We all face moments when honesty feels hard. But the first step to change is simply becoming aware of what's holding us back. Because once you understand why it's hard to be honest, you can begin to make different choices, one small step at a time. Honesty with yourself, the foundation of growth. Now, let's turn the focus inward, to one of the most important and sometimes hardest types of honesty: being honest with yourself. This is where true growth begins. Being honest with yourself means developing self-awareness. It means taking time to really face the truth about who you are, what you want, and what might be holding you back. It's about looking deeply at your own thoughts, feelings, habits, and actions, even the ones you might not want to see. This kind of honesty isn't easy. It requires courage to take a hard look at your flaws, those parts of yourself that may cause problems or keep you stuck. Maybe you have a bad habit, like procrastinating or reacting quickly with anger. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations or feel afraid to try new things. Being honest means recognizing these parts of yourself without making excuses or blaming others. It also means being clear about your goals and desires. Sometimes we pretend we want something because it sounds good, or because others expect it of us. But real honesty is asking yourself, what do I really want? What makes me happy? And then being brave enough to follow that truth, even if it's different from what others expect. Another key part of being honest with yourself is to own your mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. It's part of being human. But some people hide their mistakes or blame others for them. That only blocks growth. When you own your mistakes, you accept responsibility and learn from them. You might say, "I was wrong," or "I didn't handle that well." This kind of honesty creates space for change and improvement. Here's a question to reflect on. Can we truly change if we're not honest about what needs changing? It's hard to fix something if we don't admit it's broken. Without self-honesty, we might keep repeating the same patterns or avoid important decisions. But when we face the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, we open the door to real transformation. For example, imagine someone who wants to improve their English, but keeps making excuses. "I don't have time," or "I'm too old to learn." Without honesty, they won't recognize that fear or self-doubt might be the real reasons holding them back. But if they take a hard look and admit those feelings, they can start to find solutions, build confidence, and take real steps forward. Being honest with yourself also means being kind. Self-honesty isn't about beating yourself up or being overly critical. It's about being your own best friend, noticing where you can improve, while also celebrating your strengths and successes. In many ways, Self-honesty is the foundation for honesty with others. If we can't be truthful with ourselves, it's difficult to be truthful in our relationships or at work. But when we practice self-awareness and self-acceptance, honesty flows more naturally in every part of life. So, as you listen today, I encourage you to ask yourself, what truths am I avoiding? What parts of myself do I need to face with kindness and courage? Remember, growth is a journey, and every step begins with honesty, especially the honesty we give ourselves. The long-term power of being honest. When we think about honesty, it's easy to focus on the short-term challenges, the fear, the difficulty, or the discomfort of telling the truth. But honesty also has a powerful effect over the long run. Staying honest, even when it's hard, builds something strong and valuable inside us and around us. Let me share a story that I find inspiring. There was a colleague of mine, let's call her Maria, who worked in a busy office. One day, Maria noticed a mistake in a project report that could have caused problems for the whole team. Instead of ignoring it or covering it up, she took responsibility and told her manager about the error. At first, some people thought she might get into trouble. But over time, everyone saw that Maria's honesty showed integrity, a deep commitment to doing the right thing. Her honesty earned her respect and trust from her team, and she became a valued leader. Maria's story shows how being honest creates consistency in how others see us, which is key to building a good reputation. Honesty also gives us important emotional benefits. When we live honestly, we experience peace of mind. We don't have to worry about hiding things or remembering what lies we told. That feeling of relief is powerful. Being honest helps build our confidence too. Because when we speak our truth, we start to trust ourselves more. We know that we are living according to our values and beliefs. This alignment between what we say and what we truly feel creates a sense of authenticity that many people find deeply satisfying. Another important part of honesty is accountability. This means taking responsibility for our words and actions. When we are accountable, we admit mistakes, learn from them, and try to improve. Being accountable shows maturity and strength. People appreciate those who can own their actions instead of blaming others or making excuses. So, honesty is not just about one moment of telling the truth. It is about building habits of integrity, consistency, and accountability that shape our character and the way others experience us. Over time, these habits create lasting respect and meaningful connections. As you think about honesty in your own life, here is a question for you. Who do you admire for their honesty? And why? Maybe it's someone in your family, a teacher, a public figure, or even a friend. What is it about their honesty that inspires you? What qualities do they show that you would like to develop in yourself? Remember, honesty is a choice we make every day. It may not always be easy, but the long-term rewards, peace, confidence, respect, are well worth the effort. When honesty hurts, and how to be kind yet truthful. We've talked a lot about why honesty is important, for building trust, for living with confidence, and for creating strong relationships. But let's be real. Sometimes, honesty hurts. And this is one of the biggest challenges we face. How do we tell the truth without being unkind? There's a big difference between being honest and being harsh. Some people use truth like a weapon. They speak in a way that's too direct, too cold, or even disrespectful. They say things like, "I'm just being honest," but what they're really doing is avoiding responsibility for how their words affect others. That's why many people fear honesty. not because of the truth itself, but because of how it's delivered. This is where tactful honesty comes in, the ability to be honest with compassion. A good way to think about this is using the phrase, truth with love. It means telling the truth not to hurt someone, but to help them. It's choosing your words carefully, so the message is honest and respectful. As another saying goes, say it in a way they can hear. Because if someone feels attacked, they might stop listening. But if they feel understood, they're more open to what you have to say. Let's look at a quick example. Imagine a friend is preparing for a job interview, and they ask for your feedback on how they spoke during practice. You notice that they kept using filler words like and you know, and they didn't make good eye contact. Now, you could be very direct and say, you sounded nervous, and you didn't look confident at all. That's honest, but it might feel discouraging. Or you could say something like this, I think you have strong ideas, and you clearly care about the job. If you work a little on cutting out some filler words and keeping eye contact, I think your confidence will really shine through. That's still honest, but it's also kind. You're not avoiding the truth. You're just delivering it in a way that helps, not harms. That's what we mean when we say, speak your truth, don't throw it. Being tactful takes practice. It's not about lying or avoiding difficult topics. It's about thinking before you speak, considering the timing, your tone, and the other person's feelings. It's about asking yourself, what's the goal of my honesty? Am I helping this person grow? Or am I just trying to prove something? Sometimes, the most honest thing we can do is say something uncomfortable, but say it gently. When we speak with empathy, our honesty becomes a gift, not a weapon. So, here's something to reflect on. Have you learned to say difficult things gently? Maybe you've had to give feedback to a friend or family member. Or maybe you've received honest feedback yourself. What made the experience positive or painful? What would you do differently next time? Kind honesty creates deeper understanding. It shows emotional intelligence and strengthens relationships instead of breaking them. And like any skill, it gets better the more you practice. Cultural views on honesty. Is it always the best policy? As we continue to explore honesty, it's important to remember that honesty is not the same everywhere in the world. Different cultures have different ideas about honesty and how it should be expressed. What might be seen as honest and direct in one culture could be considered rude or disrespectful in another. So, the question is honesty always the best policy? And does honesty always look the same? In some cultures, politeness and harmony are more important than saying the blunt truth. People might avoid direct criticism or uncomfortable truths because they want to protect others' feelings and maintain good relationships. This idea is often connected to the concept of saving face. Saving face means protecting someone's dignity or reputation. It's about avoiding embarrassment or shame, both for yourself and for others. For example, if a friend cooks a meal that isn't very good, instead of saying, "This doesn't taste good," you might say, "Thank you. I appreciate your effort." In many Asian cultures, saving face is very important. Being too direct or critical can cause loss of face, which leads to discomfort and conflict. On the other hand, some people believe in radical honesty, the idea that honesty should be absolute, no matter what. This means saying exactly what you think and feel, without sugarcoating or avoiding difficult topics. Radical honesty can build deep trust because nothing is hidden. But it can also cause conflict or hurt feelings if not expressed carefully. So, both saving face and radical honesty have their advantages and challenges. Saving face helps keep peace and respect in social situations, but sometimes it can prevent important truths from being shared. Radical honesty encourages openness and authenticity, but it can sometimes feel too harsh or blunt. This balance is not easy, and different cultures find different points between these two ideas. Even within one culture, people may have different opinions about when to be direct and when to be gentle. I invite you to think about your own culture or upbringing. How is honesty viewed where you come from? Do people speak openly and directly? Or do they use softer language to protect feelings? When is it okay to tell the truth? And when might it be better to be polite or careful with your words? Understanding these cultural differences is important, especially in our global world where we meet people from many backgrounds. It helps us communicate better and respect others' ways of being honest. At the same time, knowing these differences does not mean we should avoid honesty. Instead, it means we need to find a way to be honest and respectful, to speak our truth in a way that builds connection, not conflict. This might mean choosing our words carefully, listening well, and paying attention to how others respond. Honesty is a skill, not just a rule. It takes practice, empathy, and cultural awareness. By learning about these different views, we can become more thoughtful communicators. We can ask ourselves, how can I be honest in a way that respects others and myself? And that question can guide us to deeper understanding and stronger relationships, no matter where we are in the world. As we come to the end of this episode, let's take a moment to look back at everything we've talked about. The power and importance of honesty in our lives. Honesty is much more than just telling the truth. It's about being real with ourselves and others, building trust, and living with courage and self-respect. We've seen how honesty helps us connect deeply with people, grow in confidence, and find peace inside. It is truly one of the most valuable qualities we can practice. At the same time, honesty is not always easy. It takes courage to be honest when we're afraid of judgment or conflict. It requires self-awareness to admit our mistakes and face our fears. And it means understanding that honesty doesn't always mean saying everything bluntly. Sometimes it's about choosing the right words, showing kindness, and respecting others' feelings. But even with these challenges, honesty is always worth it. Because when we choose honesty, we choose freedom. Freedom from secrets, from worry, and from the stress of hiding parts of ourselves. We choose growth and connection. And we choose to live authentically, in a way that feels true to who we really are. So, here is a simple challenge for you. This week, try to be a little more honest in one area of your life. Maybe it's being honest with a friend about how you really feel. Maybe it's admitting a mistake at work, or asking for help when you need it. Or maybe it's being honest with yourself about a goal or a fear you've been avoiding. It doesn't have to be a big moment. Even small steps toward honesty can make a big difference. And as you think about this challenge, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on. What's one truth you've been avoiding? And what would happen if you finally said it out loud? Imagine the relief you might feel, the space it could create for change, the new possibilities that honesty can open. Thank you for joining me today on Code Your English. I hope this episode has inspired you to embrace honesty as a tool for growth, connection, and freedom. Remember, every journey starts with a single step. And today, you've taken that step toward living more honestly. I look forward to being with you again soon for our next episode. Until then, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and keep coding your English and your life.